Standing in front of an audience that filled the cavernous hall, I could feel the weight of their skepticism pressing down on me. My heart raced, not just from the adrenaline of presenting my groundbreaking research, but from the fear of rejection. I adjusted my glasses and looked out at the sea of faces, some curious, others openly doubtful. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady despite the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface, "what I am about to present is not science fiction. It is a reality we are on the brink of discovering, a reality that reveals the existence of parallel dimensions." I clicked the remote, and the screen behind me flickered to life, displaying intricate graphs and images that illustrated my findings. For years, I have been experimenting with quantum fields, and my research has led me to open a portal, a gateway to another dimension. The murmurs in the audience grew louder, and I could sense the disbelief radiating from the rows of scientists and skeptics. A tall man in the front row raised his hand, his brow furrowed. "Dr. Carter, have you considered the implications of such technology? You could be inviting chaos into our world." "Absolutely," I replied, my voice firm. "But we cannot turn a blind eye to the possibilities. We have a chance to explore, to understand, and yes, to connect with other realities. Imagine the knowledge we could gain." I could see some people nodding, but I also noticed the shaking heads. The tension in the room was palpable, and I was determined to break through it. A few moments later, the presentation shifted to video footage from my last experiment, a swirling mass of colors and energy. "This is actual footage of the portal's activation," I stated, trying to maintain my composure. "What you are seeing is not a trick of light, it is the manifestation of a parallel dimension." The room erupted in whispers, and I pressed on, fueled by my passion. "If we can harness this technology, we could revolutionize energy, travel, and perhaps even resolve conflicts through understanding." As I concluded my presentation, a round of applause erupted, albeit hesitant. I stepped down from the podium, my heart still racing, processing the mix of reactions. Suddenly, a voice broke through my thoughts. "Impressive presentation, Dr. Carter," a man said, approaching me. His name tag read Marcus Reed, and I could see the wariness etched in his features. "But you do realize the potentially catastrophic consequences of what you're proposing, right?" "Of course," I replied, meeting his gaze. "But isn't that the nature of progress? We cannot let fear dictate our choices." I noticed the shadows of his past in the way he carried himself, and I felt an unexpected connection. "You understand conflict, don't you?" He hesitated, a flicker of pain crossing his face. "I've seen enough chaos for a lifetime, Dr. Carter. I just hope you know what you're getting into." Before I could respond, the lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the audience as I prepared for the demonstration of my portal technology. "This is where theory meets reality," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. I activated the machine, and it hummed to life, the air crackling with energy. Suddenly, a surge of power coursed through the room. I felt it before I saw it, a violent tremor that shook the floor beneath us. "No!" I shouted, desperately trying to stabilize the controls. The machine sparked and whirred uncontrollably, and then with a blinding flash, the portal opened. Chaos erupted as the audience gasped, some people shouting and others scrambling for the exits. "Evelyn." Marcus's voice broke through the din, but I could barely hear him over the cacophony. The portal pulsed, a swirling vortex of colors and sounds, and before I could react, it pulled me in. I felt a jolt, an electrifying sensation that ripped through me. The world around me twisted and blurred, and I caught a glimpse of Marcus reaching for me, his expression a mix of fear and determination. And then, everything went dark. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer in the conference hall. Around me, the air was thick with tension, and the landscape was unrecognizable. I turned, searching for Marcus, realizing that whatever had just happened was only the beginning. The air was thick with an acrid smell, a bitter testament to the devastation that surrounded us. As I took a tentative step forward, the ground crunched beneath my boots, pieces of shattered metal and fragments of what once might have been a vehicle. My heart raced, caught between the adrenaline of the unknown and the dread of what lay ahead. "Where the hell are we?" I muttered, glancing at Marcus, who stood beside me, his expression a mixture of confusion and determination. "It feels like a war zone," he replied, scanning the horizon. The skeletal remains of structures loomed in the distance, their outlines stark against a bruised sky. A low rumble echoed, and I felt the vibrations in my chest, a harsh reminder that we were no longer in our own world. Before I could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows. A young woman, her fiery hair whipping in the wind, approached us with a fervor that was both alarming and captivating. "You shouldn't be here," she warned, her voice steady but urgent. "The Celestials are everywhere. We need to move now." Celestials. I echoed, the term unfamiliar yet heavy with implication. Marcus shifted his weight, clearly on high alert. I could sense the tension radiating from him, a familiar feeling for a soldier who had fought in his own battles. "They're a faction that believes in absolute order," she explained, her blue eyes piercing into mine. "They want to impose their will on everyone, including you. And the war, it's spilling into your dimension. It's already begun." I exchanged a glance with Marcus, the weight of her words sinking in. "But why us? We just stumbled into this mess," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "You're here because of the portal. It's destabilizing, and the Celestials want to use it to their advantage. They'll stop at nothing to control it." She paused, looking back over her shoulder, as if sensing danger lurking in the shadows. "My name is Lila, by the way. I'm an activist, fighting against this madness." "Madness indeed," Marcus muttered, his eyes narrowing. "What do we do? We can't just stand here." "Follow me," Lila urged, her voice resolute. "I know a place where we can regroup and figure out our next move." We fell into step behind her, the desolation stretching endlessly around us. The chaos of the world we had entered was palpable. I could feel the remnants of conflict in the air, a tension that was almost suffocating. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Suddenly, a loud crack split the air, and I instinctively ducked, pulling Marcus down with me. "Get down," Lila hissed, her eyes wide with fear. From the corner of my eye, I caught sight of figures advancing toward us, dressed in stark white armor, their expressions hidden behind visors. The Celestials. As they approached, I could see the insignia emblazoned on their chest plates, a symbol of authority and power. "This way," Lila shouted, darting into a narrow alley. We followed her without hesitation, adrenaline surging through my veins. My heart hammered against my ribcage as we sprinted, the sounds of our pursuers echoing ominously. Just as we turned a corner, I could hear the thud of boots behind us, the Celestials closing in. "We can't outrun them forever," I gasped, desperation creeping into my voice. "We don't have to." Lila shot back, her eyes sparkling with determination. "There's a hidden passage up ahead. We can lose them there." We reached a crumbling wall, and Lila pushed aside debris, revealing a narrow gap. "Get in quickly," she urged. Marcus squeezed through first, followed by me, with Lila bringing up the rear. I held my breath as we pressed our backs against the cold stone, the sounds of pursuit fading into the distance. Once inside, I turned to Lila, my voice low. "What now? We're trapped here, at least for the moment." Lila took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "We need to make a choice. This war isn't just about survival, it's about which side we align with. The Celestials offer order, but at what cost? The Chaotics embrace freedom, but they're reckless. We need to decide what we stand for." Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I've seen what absolute order can do. It doesn't protect people, it crushes them. But freedom without structure can lead to chaos." His voice dropped to a whisper, as if the weight of his past was pulling him down. "What do we do?" I felt a sense of urgency building within me. We need to find a way to the portal. If we can control it, maybe we can stop this war before it reaches our world. Lila nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. "Then we better figure out our next steps quickly. The Celestials won't stop hunting us, and the longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes." As we huddled together in that cramped space, I could feel the gravity of our situation pressing in on us. We were no longer just observers. We were players in a game far larger than ourselves, and the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. The air was thick with tension as we were led deeper into the chaotic stronghold. I could feel the weight of their gazes on us, like knives probing for weakness. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into a web of deception, and I could see it reflected in Marcus's eyes too. He walked beside me, his jaw clenched, and the haunted look from the conference still lingered. "Keep your guard up," he whispered, breaking the silence that hung heavily around us. "We don't know their true intentions." I nodded, but my mind was racing. The Chaotix had taken us in, claiming we were allies against the Celestials. It felt absurd, yet here we were, trapped between two worlds. As we entered a dimly lit chamber, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Kale, the charismatic leader of the Chaotix. "Welcome, my new friends," he said, his voice smooth and inviting. "You have come at a crucial time. The Celestials threaten our very existence." He gestured broadly, as if encompassing the entire chaos of the world outside. "Together, we can dismantle their oppressive regime and forge a new order. One where freedom reigns." I exchanged glances with Marcus and Lila. Lila's brow furrowed as she took a step forward. "And what does that freedom look like, Kale? You speak of liberation, but what happens to those who don't align with your ideology?" Kale smiled, but there was something unsettling about it. "Those who resist will be dealt with. It's a necessary sacrifice for the greater good." His eyes sparkled with fervor, but I sensed an underlying threat. My heart raced as I recalled the stories of the Celestials' brutality. Was this man any better? "Lila," I murmured, trying to gauge her reaction. "We need to be cautious." As if sensing my trepidation, Kale continued, "You, Evelyn, are a brilliant physicist. Your technology can be the key to our victory. Imagine opening portals to bring our forces into the celestial realm. We would overthrow them before they even knew what hit them." I took a deep breath, struggling to reconcile his vision with the potential consequences. "And what happens when we become the oppressors ourselves?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "We'd be no different from them." Kale's expression hardened for a moment, but he quickly masked it with a grin. "You're thinking too small. This is about survival, about rewriting the fate of our worlds. Join us, and we can create a new reality together." Marcus stepped forward, his eyes ablaze with something I hadn't seen before, a glimmer of hope perhaps. "What if we could end this war without more bloodshed? Can't we find a way to negotiate with the Celestials instead?" Kale laughed, but it was cold and dismissive. "Negotiate? With them? They will never agree to your terms. Their ideology is rooted in control. You've seen the ruins outside. They will stop at nothing to maintain their dominion." I could see Marcus wrestling with his own demons, grappling with the idea of freedom he had long fought for. "But if we join you, how can we be sure we're not just trading one tyrant for another?" Kale's gaze turned steely. "You think you have a choice? You're in the middle of a war that's not yours. Join us, or you'll perish with the Celestials." Lila's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "What if we refuse?" she challenged, her eyes fierce. "What if we decide to forge our own path?" Kale stepped closer, his demeanor shifting to something darker. "Then you're either too naive or too foolish to survive in this world. I'll give you time to think, but know this, time is running out." As he turned to leave, I felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling within me. The Chaotix were not the saviors they claimed to be. They were just another faction in a war that threatened to consume us all. I glanced at Marcus, whose expression was a mixture of determination and uncertainty. Lila stood resolute, but I could see the worry etched on her face. "Evelyn," Marcus said, breaking the silence as the door closed behind Kale. "We can't let ourselves be puppets in this game. We need to find a way to expose the truth, to understand what's really at stake." I nodded, feeling the weight of our situation pressing down on me. But how do we do that? If we dig too deep, we could endanger ourselves even more. "Then we do it together," Lila said firmly. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. We owe it to ourselves and to the people suffering on both sides to uncover the truth." As we stood there, united in our resolve, I realized we were at a crossroads. The choices we made next would shape not just our fates, but the fate of two entire worlds. But with every passing moment, I felt the darkness closing in, and I feared the light we sought would be extinguished before we could grasp it. I paced the dimly lit chamber of the chaotic stronghold, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of secrets pressing down on all of us. Lila had just stormed in, her face flushed with urgency. "Evelyn, Marcus, we need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet charged with an intensity that demanded attention. "What is it?" I asked, trying to mask the mounting dread that coiled in my stomach. "They're planning to use your portal technology to invade Earth," she said, each word like a hammer hitting a nail. "They want to impose their rule on our world. We can't let that happen." Marcus, who had been leaning against the wall, pushed himself upright, his expression shifting from skepticism to alarm. "Are you sure about this, Lila? That sounds extreme." I overheard Kale talking to his inner circle. "They think that Earth is weak and ripe for takeover. They believe they can create a new order, but it'll be at our expense. It's the same kind of tyranny we're fighting against." Her voice rose with each word, a mixture of fear and anger. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had no idea, I admitted. The realization hit me like a slap. My research, my work, it's being twisted into a weapon. Lila stepped closer, her eyes fierce. "We have to escape. We can't let them use your technology. We have to warn the others back on Earth." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, his expression conflicted. "But what about the Chaotix? They're fighting against the Celestials. They need our help." "Their methods are just as dangerous," Lila countered, her voice steady. "We can't choose a side that's willing to destroy our world to achieve their goals. We have to do what's right." I glanced at Marcus, searching for some sign of agreement, but he looked lost in thought. I could see the internal battle raging within him. "You both don't understand," he finally said, his voice low. "I've seen what the Celestials do to those who resist. I thought the Chaotix were different. I thought they were fighting for freedom. But at what cost?" Lila implored, stepping closer to him. "We can't let our ideals blind us to the truth. Freedom doesn't come from tyranny, no matter which side it's from." "I need time to think," Marcus replied, his voice strained. "This is all happening too fast." As he turned away, I felt the chasm between us widen. I wanted to reach out, to pull him back from the edge, but I didn't know how. I was trapped in my own turmoil, realizing that my creations, the portals, the technology, had become the catalyst for this war. Suddenly, the door burst open, and Kale strode in, flanked by 2 guards. "What's this? A secret meeting without me?" His tone was mocking, but his eyes were sharp, assessing. Lila straightened, her demeanor shifting to one of calm resolve. "We were just discussing our next move, Kale," she said, her voice steady. "We need to consider the implications of our actions." Kale's gaze flickered between us. "Implications? You're either with us or against us. There's no room for hesitation." He stepped closer, his presence oppressive. "You should understand, Lila. To win this war, sacrifices must be made. Are you willing to make yours?" I felt my heart race. "What do you mean by that?" I demanded, stepping in front of Lila instinctively. Kale's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Those who oppose us will be dealt with accordingly. You're too valuable to lose, Evelyn. But should you choose to side with dissenters," he paused, letting the implication hang in the air, "it would be a shame if anything were to happen to you or her." The threat was palpable, and I could feel the tension in the room escalate. "We're not dissenters," Lila said, her voice strong despite the fear that flickered in her eyes. "We're trying to save our world from becoming a battlefield." Kale's expression darkened. "You do well to remember who holds the power here. The Celestials will come for us, and if you're not with us, you'll be against us. Choose wisely." With that, he turned on his heel, the guards following close behind, leaving an air of foreboding in their wake. As the door slammed shut, I turned to Lila and Marcus, my heart racing. "We need to leave. Now." Marcus nodded, but the doubt lingered in his eyes. "But where do we go? We're trapped in this dimension." "Not if we find a way to use the portal," I said, my mind racing. "I'll figure it out. We can't let them use my work to enslave anyone else." Lila placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We'll figure it out together, Evelyn. But we have to move fast." We gathered our things, the weight of the world on our shoulders. As we prepared to escape, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running not just from the Chaotix, but from the very choices that had led us here. And as we stepped into the unknown, I couldn't help but wonder what awaited us on the other side of the portal, and if we could ever truly escape the fractured realities we had created. As we trudged through the rubble of what had once been a vibrant community, I felt the weight of despair pressing down on my shoulders. The air was thick with smoke, remnants of the battles that had raged between the Celestials and the Chaotix. I glanced at Evelyn and Lila, both pale and wide-eyed, as we sought refuge with a small group of Celestials who had chosen to oppose the war. They were a patchwork of weary faces, each one bearing the marks of conflict, but there was a flicker of hope in their eyes. "Are you sure they'll help us?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She kept glancing over her shoulder, as if expecting an ambush at any moment. "They have to," I replied, forcing a sense of confidence I didn't entirely feel. "They know what's at stake, just like we do." Evelyn stepped forward, her brow furrowed in concentration as she approached the leader of the Celestials, a tall figure named Alara. "We need to talk about the nature of this war," she said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "It's not what it seems. There's more to it than just the factions fighting each other." Alara nodded solemnly. "We were once united, you know. Before the rift opened, we were one society. The split has only brought ruin." "What caused it?" I asked, stepping closer, desperate for answers. Evelyn exchanged a glance with Alara. "It was the portal technology. It was meant to expand our understanding, to unite us with other realities, but it backfired. The energy released created the rift, and from that moment, we were divided." Lila's eyes widened in realization. "So this war, it's because of Evelyn's work?" "Yes," Evelyn admitted, her voice heavy with guilt. "I never intended for any of this to happen. I thought I was opening doors to new possibilities, not tearing apart our world." "We can fix this," Alara interjected, her voice firm. "But it will require cooperation from both sides. We need to close the rift, restore what was lost." Evelyn nodded, a spark of determination igniting in her eyes. "If we can unite the factions, we might stand a chance. But it won't be easy. Marcus, what do you think?" "Freedom at any cost can lead to destruction," Lila countered, her voice rising. "We need to find a way to show them that peace is the only way forward." Evelyn looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Marcus, I need you to help me convince them. You have the experience, you know how to speak their language." "I don't know if I can," I said, my heart pounding. I feel drawn to the chaotics. Kale's vision speaks to me. It's hard to let go of that." Lila stepped closer, her expression fierce. "And what about the lives that will be lost if we don't act? We can't let ourselves be pawns in this game any longer. We need to take a stand." As we prepared to confront the leaders of both factions, a sense of dread washed over me. This wasn't just about choosing sides anymore, it was about making a choice that would affect countless lives. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it was my own identity that was fractured. I was a soldier, trained to fight for what I believed in, yet here I was, grappling with the very concept of belief itself. "Whatever happens, we stick together," I finally said, my voice low but resolute. "We're in this as a team. No turning back." Evelyn nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Together." Lila placed her hand on my shoulder, her grip firm and reassuring. "Whatever truth we uncover, we face it together. No matter how devastating it might be." As we moved forward, I felt a surge of determination. We were not just fighting for ourselves anymore, we were fighting for a future that could bring an end to the suffering. But deep down, a nagging voice reminded me that the truth we sought might be more complicated than any of us realized. The leaders of both dimensions were playing their own games, and I feared that we were merely pieces on their chessboard, unaware of the true stakes involved. As we approached the makeshift throne where the leaders of the Celestials and Chaotics convened, a heavy silence enveloped us, thick with tension. I could feel my heart racing in my chest, a drumbeat of uncertainty. Marcus walked alongside me, his jaw set in determination, while Lila's eyes darted around, scanning the faces of those who held our fates in their hands. I thought of all we had been through, but nothing prepared me for this confrontation. "Evelyn Carter," a voice boomed from the shadows. Kale, the leader of the Chaotics, stepping forward with an air of defiance. "You stand here, a bridge between worlds. Do you not see the power you wield?" "Power?" I echoed, my voice trembling. "This isn't about power. It's about stopping this war, about saving all of us." "Save us?" Lila interjected, her tone incredulous. "You can't possibly believe that siding with either of these factions will lead to peace. They're both corrupt." "I'm not siding with anyone," I said, taking a step forward, my gaze unwavering. "I just want to end the cycle of destruction. We need to find common ground." But before anyone could respond, Eliana, the fierce leader of the Celestials, glared at me, her piercing blue eyes filled with suspicion. Common ground? You are a traitor among us, Evelyn. You think we've forgotten your connection to the celestial lineage. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. What are you talking about? Your mother was one of us, Cale interrupted, his voice a mix of anger and betrayal. A celestial who abandoned her own kind. You carry her blood, yet you stand here with these chaotics. Enough. Lila shouted, stepping between us. This isn't helping. We're on the brink of annihilation, and you're pointing fingers? This is madness. Madness. Eliana retorted, her voice rising. You don't understand the stakes. The chaotics want to invade Earth, to bend it to their will. They are no better than the Celestials' oppressive regime. Marcus clenched his fists, his expression conflicted. I've fought for freedom my entire life. The Celestials may have their order, but it's nothing but oppression in disguise. I believe the chaotics can bring about true freedom. Marcus, Lila's voice softened, desperation creeping in. You can't really believe that. They'll use you just as they planned to use Evelyn. You're playing into their hands. Enough. I shouted, my voice cutting through the chaos. This isn't about us anymore. It's about stopping the war. I turned to Cale and Eliana, pleading. If we don't work together, we'll all be destroyed when the rift collapses. But the tension escalated, and suddenly, accusations flew like arrows. Cale glared at Eliana, accusing her of manipulating the Celestials. Eliana countered, claiming that the chaotics were nothing but anarchists seeking chaos. The air crackled with energy, and I could feel the rift behind us beginning to destabilize. Stop! I yelled, panic rising in my throat. You're going to destroy us all. But it was too late. The ground shook, and an eerie light pulsed from the rift. In that moment of chaos, Lila darted forward, her face resolute. I'll fix this. You two need to get out of here. No. Lila, don't. Marcus and I shouted in unison, but she was already moving, her determination guiding her steps. I can hold it together long enough for you to escape, she cried, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of fear and resolve. You have to go. You're the only hope left. I felt my heart shatter as I reached for her. Lila, please. But she was gone, diving into the fray, hands raised as if to contain the chaos around her. The rift pulsed violently, and I could see the very fabric of reality tearing apart. Evelyn, we have to go now. Marcus grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the exit. But I couldn't tear my gaze away from Lila, who was fighting against the tide of destruction with everything she had. As the rift collapsed, colors swirling and sounds distorting, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. No. I screamed, but the world around us was unraveling. The last thing I saw was Lila, her brave smile etched in my mind, before the darkness consumed everything. When I opened my eyes again, Marcus and I were alone in a void, the remnants of two warring realities fading into nothingness. My heart sank as I realized the price we had paid. Lila was gone, and with her, our chance for peace. The choices we made had led us here, stranded in a fractured reality with nothing left but the weight of our failures.